Please welcome to the stage venture capitalist Chris Redlitz, who is the founder of The Last Mile, and Kenyatta Leal, a former inmate at San Quentin and a founding member of The Last Mile. Gentlemen, welcome. Kenyatta, good to see you, man. Good to see you, Tyler. Good to see you. Sit down.
All righty.
So, for those of you who don't know what The Last Mile is, I'm going to let Chris explain it. It is basically a program that uses the teaching of coding and other tech skills within the confines of prisons. And these are not little friendly club-fed kinds of prisons, San Quentin, Folsom, and others. Sure. Tell us how it came about, how it started.
Sure. Well, I was invited about 10 years ago. I was invited into San Quentin to do a talk to a group of men about business and technology. And I was invited by a friend who was doing some mentoring to some of the inmates in San Quentin. And she said, there's a lot of guys here who have a lot of questions about business. I can answer them. There's no resource here. Would you just come in and talk to them? And my first answer was no. Why would I do that? I don't know anything about prison. I've never been in prison. They're not going to understand what I'm talking about. But she was very persistent. So one night I went in and I spoke to a group of about 50 guys. And that was such a sort of transformational evening for me because I expected a lot of blank stares. And what I got were a huge amount of interest, questions. I had committed 30 minutes and my talk ended up being 3 hours. And I walked away just sort of blown away by what I had seen.
You know, did they come to you with business plans?
They did. I had a couple
and
guys
ideas that...
Yes. They had business plans they handed me that they had been sitting on for God knows how long. And, you know, it's interesting because I invest in early stage companies, you know, seed stage founders, and I had sort of the experience of that look in their eyes was very similar to people I invest in. You know, these are entrepreneurial people in many cases, just went the wrong way, right? So that was amazing to me. So I left prison, got in my car, my head was spinning, and I blew through the door at home, and I told my wife and my business partner, Beverly, I'm like, I think we can start a program in San Quentin. And she said, I can't really say what she said, but she said, well, you can ask her, she's sitting in the front row. And she said, no way am I going in prison. Why would I do that? I said, you have to see what I saw. So about a month later, she came in. We did a lot of research about recidivism and cost of incarceration, which we were totally ignorant about. We realized we could do something, and the goal was just to help a few of those guys develop their business plans.
Kenyatta, I promise you I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions in a few minutes, but I want to go first through a couple of things with Chris. How did you make that leap from that moment where you see this interest in entrepreneurship to concluding that teaching coding within the confines of a prison was the way to go? Well, why was it that and not something else?
Well, we started as an entrepreneurship program because we felt like these are people that have ideas and they want to develop them. So we started an entrepreneurship program in 2010, and Kenyatta was in our first class, and we said we should do this, but we didn't know who should be part of this program. So we went to the administration. We said we want to do this and get a small group and help them. And so Kenyatta's name kept coming up. It's like, you need to talk to this guy because he needs to be part of this program. And I met Kenyatta one day, you know, about a week later or so, and he was one of the most positive, energetic guys I'd ever met. He was so enthusiastic, and he's serving a life sentence. He had no release date at that point. I'm like, how can somebody like that have such a positive attitude? And that's really, he became sort of the central part of that first class.
So the class then starts there. There was the question of how do you teach coding in a place where the internet is forbidden?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Yeah, so we said, you know, teaching soft skills and entrepreneurship is great.
And where some of the guys probably had never seen the internet, right?
Yes,
correct.
Yeah. So matter of fact, our first class, they had all served 10 years or more. So many of them had not ever been on the internet. After we had evolved this entrepreneurship program, we really got the trust of the administration in California Department of Corrections. We came to them with the idea like, we want to teach a really horrible skill. We want to teach coding because there is such a lack of coders everywhere. We had no idea whether it would resonate, and you can't have direct connectivity in prison. So we had to create basically a simulated environment.
Virtual internet.
Exactly. So it took me about a year, Beverly and I, about a year to get it approved. We started with, again, a pretty small class, and that's evolved to today. We're in 19 classrooms across 5 states. We're growing. We have people in the Valley that are, we'll talk about more, that are working as software engineers.
How many guys are in a class at a time, and is it what, as I understand it, it's sort of 2 semesters of 6 months each?
Right.
How many guys in class?
Depending on the size of the class, anywhere from 22 to 30 in a class.
And how do they get selected? What are the criteria there? Do you just take anybody, or
no,
they have to be certain?
It's pretty rigorous, actually. They go through logic tests, written tests. One of the big things is they have to have good behavior. So you cannot have an infraction 2 years before you apply during that period. So we're looking for people who are really dedicated to being good citizens and also focused on really a good outcome.
How many people have you educated, and how many are now employed as coders somewhere, or in the world of technology?
Sure, we've educated over 500. We have 70 in the workplace. Many are getting out. Matter of fact, we had a guy get out of San Quentin today, Harry Hemphill, who was part of our joint venture inside, which we're excited about. So people are starting to get out more and more, but we have 70 in the workplace today.
And the remainder, the 70 versus the 500, the remainder are either in programs now or are awaiting release.
Exactly.
And presumably will get out. The recidivism rate among people who get out of prison is very high, 50%, 40%, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's 50 to 60%.
50 to 60%. How about your recidivism rate?
Well, knock on wood, over 10 years we had 0 reoffense, so 0.
None?
Yeah.
None?
None.
That's quite amazing.
Yeah.
Kenyatta.
Yes, sir.
Tell us your story. Why were you in prison?
Because I was being a dumbass. Can I say that on TV? No, but really though, I was making horrible choices. I grew up in Southeast San Diego, California, and I was dealing with a lot of trauma as a young person. And as opposed to asking for help, I sought help in the street in the wrong places, and just fell in with the wrong crowd, started making some horrible decisions, ended up dropping out of high school, and then a friend of mine and I came up with this crazy idea to go rob this place. And we robbed the place, got away with some money, and then he went back and tried to rob the same place again without me. Got caught, and then ended up telling the authorities about my participation in the first robbery. So ended up going to prison for that for about 5 years. While I was incarcerated, I didn't do anything to work on myself. I was basically just in there.
How old were you the first time you were in?
I was 22 years old, and I spent about 3.5 years fighting fires. I was an inmate firefighter for the California Department of Corrections. But outside of that, I mean, I didn't really do anything to address the causative factors of me going to prison to begin with. The only thing that I was in there doing was really just, doing push-ups and planning how I was going to exact my revenge on this guy who snitched on me, basically. And that's a very dangerous mindset to have, leaving a correctional facility. And within 5 months of my release, I was found to be in possession of a firearm, and that served as my 3rd strike, and I went to prison for 25 to life for being an ex-felon in possession of a firearm.
25 to life.
25 to life.
How did you connect with the last mile? And
well,
what changed? What changed from the young man who had been the victim of trauma, had had a lot of difficult experiences, who was thinking about getting revenge on the guy who put you in there the first time, to the person who was interested in a career after you got out, if you got out?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was a process. It didn't happen overnight. But facing a sentence of 25 to life, I mean, that's, pretty sobering experience. I went through probably about the first 5 years in deep denial about the role that I played in getting myself there. And I had an experience where a friend of mine just really gave me some tough love and helped open my eyes to the role that I played in getting myself there. And so, it was from that point that I realized and admitted that I was the problem. Up until that point, it was everybody else's fault. Do
you remember the first day you met him?
I do.
What was it like?
It was great because, I'd probably served about 12 or 13 years at that point, and by the time I met Chris, I was already embarked on this journey of change and transformation. I knew that I wasn't in prison just to get out. I was there to learn a lesson so that I could be a better person, and actually be able to contribute to my community when I came home. And so I was already embarked on that journey of change and transformation. I met Chris, and he came with this idea of starting an entrepreneurship program at San Quentin. And it appealed to me immediately because I've always had this entrepreneurial spirit. I just used it in the wrong way in the street. And so I found it to be a great opportunity.
I suppose robbing a place could be considered entrepreneurial on a certain level, I guess. But
yeah. So I mean, there's this this spirit that I've had inside of me, this entrepreneurial kind of hustle kind of spirit, and I just saw being able to engage with Chris and his wife Beverly and the folks that they were bringing in was a great opportunity for me to transform my hustle in a positive way and do something that was going to help me not just get out of prison, but be able to stay out of prison.
And you got out after going through a parole board. I guess some laws changed, is that right? Or
correct. It was Prop 36.
Prop 36, it changed the law that where are you now? What has been your journey since you got out?
So I've been working with the Last Mile since I got out as a board member, as an evangelist. Now I'm a business development specialist with the Last Mile. I started working in a partnership with Slack and the Kellogg Foundation and John Legend's Free America to work on a project called Next Chapter. And basically it's an apprenticeship program where we're helping folks from organizations like the Last Mile find work and succeed in tech.
Let's go to the audience for questions, because I know you must have some. It's a fascinating story. You must have a question. Here's one right in front. Go ahead.
I was the one asking questions. Do you code?
I don't.
Did you do any of the coding exercises in the?
I didn't. I was actually part of the entrepreneurship program at the very beginning. We did that for about 4 years, and then we pivoted towards coding.
Okay, cool. And so I'm curious, as a software person, what are you teaching them? What languages? What kind of software? What are they learning?
Yeah, it's primarily front end. So we really there's, as Tyler said, there's 2 6-month cohorts. The first one we really start with basics, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and then we move into more advanced JavaScript in the second 6 months. And it's a full-time job. They're in the lab 40 hours a week, and as we said, many of those folks in the program have never touched a keyboard before. So you really see that commitment over time that you can literally, like some of the guys that are at Slack, their stories are phenomenal. They had no technology experience, and they are now working as software engineers at Slack. That really shows that it can be done even without any previous experience.
Other questions? Anyone? You're an insider. I'm going to get to you, but I'm going to, yes, the young lady in the blue jacket or cream color jacket.
Hi, my name's Leigh. I work for Udacity. We're an online education company. So I'm curious to know what kind of courses do you use, and how do you also use the in-person, since everyone is there in person, how do you then have like study groups, or what's the pedagogy around your learning at the Last Mile?
Yeah. So our original cohort, we had a partnership with Hack Reactor. So they collaborated with our curriculum. Now we work with a variety of boot camps and also resources that we've basically put together our own curriculum in a learning management system that the students have access to. And so it's really a collaboration of content there. We do also have, we launched this about 6 months ago. We have live broadcasts. We created a studio here in San Francisco where we actually go live into each classroom at least 1 hour per week. And they also have access to help desks. They have academic support reps, which are basically comprised of our graduates, that students inside can get help as well. So it's been a sort of a combination of a variety of sources to create that curriculum.
You had a quick question. I'll go there. Go ahead. Shout it out.
So you mentioned that you had 70 returned citizens who are graduates of the program. Can you give us an idea of what they're doing today? And I know that only a percentage of them were software engineers in the coding program, but what is the zero recidivism rate, and where are they working today?
Do you want to answer that yourself?
No.
So they are working a variety of, some of our early graduates who were in the entrepreneurship program are doing some non-technical things. Several have their own nonprofits and so forth. But most recently, we have employed companies like Slack, obviously, Adobe, Chegg, Checker, Fandom, Chan Zuckerberg. They've all hired our graduates. And these are not layup jobs. They have to actually interview and qualify for these jobs. And it really is a sort of a testament to their skills as well.
Kenyatta, final question for both of you. Mm-hmm. What have you learned about yourself, about the world, as a result of this?
Well, one thing that I've learned is that we all need support. You know, I was going through life early on, trying to do everything on my own, and I was really afraid to ask for help. And so for me, something that I've learned is that collaboration, asking for help, it's not a weakness, it's actually a strength. And just between that and, I mean, we're living in a world today where we've come up with 1,000 ways to make sure that a plastic bottle or aluminum can gets a new life. And it's programs like The Last Mile that are helping create opportunities for other people. And so I feel like it's this kind of work that it's just so fulfilling in so many ways, me having come from that environment. So I just feel really blessed to be here and to be able to do this work and to help create opportunities for other people.
What's your biggest lesson?
I think when we first started, we didn't think or know that we'd get any interest from people on the outside. When we literally taught the class ourselves for 2 years, went in San Quentin 2 nights a week, and we weren't sure if the business community, people that we knew would be interested, and ultimately would companies hire. The fact is today that we have hundreds of volunteers. We've got companies throughout Silicon Valley and beyond who are contributing to what we're doing, and ultimately people are hiring the graduates. So what we thought was sort of risky and not sure of the results, it's been amazing the amount of support that we've gotten.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.